let's talk some cornerbacks because I wrote about it at LouisianaSports.net, and I'm fascinated by this position group in a big way. You all know that LSU's cornerback play, really the last, I could probably go back 4 years, has not been good enough. It just hasn't. And that's just been a slip from the standard that LSU had set, which was the best in the country over the course of about 15 years. And it slipped. And I think a lot of that had to do with Corey Raymond's departure. There are a lot of factors. You can talk about position coach hires. You can talk about name, image, and likeness. You can talk about what the state has done. You can talk about a lot of different things, but I know the result hasn't been good enough. And so you look at what's happened since Corey Raymond came back, and I can start to see the writing on the wall that things are changing. How great are they going to be this year? I'm not sure. You lose Zy Alexander to graduation. He signed with the Seahawks. He was your best corner. It's an FCS transfer and an undrafted player. There are injuries there, but still, that's the result. J.K. Johnson and Jair Brown, your Ohio State transfers, they move on. They're at Oklahoma State and UCF. And so what do you have back? Well, you got Ashton Stamps, who's been a 2-year starter. He was probably thrust into action pretty quickly, but he's a third-year starter now. PJ Woodland is back. He's still a little bit undersized. And then you bring in Michael Turner and Wallace Foster, who are just really, really, really thin. I don't have another way to say it. You go out. If I sent you out to practice tomorrow, and I said, I want you to find Michael Turner and Wallace Foster, and I took all the jersey numbers off of every player, you would find them in 5 minutes. Like, you would walk around. I mean, it may not even take you 5 minutes. They're noticeably the thinnest guys out there. But you brought in an influx of talent here that looks more like LSU. You bring in Mansoor Delane, who's running with the ones. You've got Jakeem Jackson from Florida coming in, who Corey Raymond identified out of high school as a 4-star recruit and was a starter for Florida last year in the first game before he got hurt. And then you got DJ Pickett, who's the crown jewel, right? Aiden Anding comes in with him. He was the number 1 corner in the state of Louisiana. And so your, best I can tell, your cornerback rotation is right now Ashton Stamps, Mansoor Delane, DJ Pickett, Jakeem Jackson, PJ Woodland. It's those 5 guys. If you want to throw Anding in there, maybe 4. That's very likely what you're looking at. And so what does that mean? Ashton Stamps grades okay against Pro Football Focus. He was 3rd in the SEC in passes broken up last year. He still has not made an interception at LSU, which is not the end-all, be-all for corners, but he does get beat a little bit. I think he was rushed into playing time, but I think his floor is pretty high. I think he's a serviceable SEC corner that has more room to grow. Mansoor Delane has started for 2 years at Virginia Tech, and that's 29 games. He was 3rd in the ACC in interceptions last year. He had 4 of them. He's physical. He forced 8 incompletions last year, but there was some downside. He was flagged for 4 pass interference penalties, and he allowed 7 touchdowns last year, which was a high for Virginia Tech. But I watch the NFL draft guys talk about Delane, and there are some things they really like. He is physical. He's got good feet, and he played the ball pretty well last year. Some of that physicality leads to pass interferences, and then, he gave up some touchdowns, which is not good. But again, I think the floor is pretty high there. So where's the ceiling? The ceiling is Pickett, right? The ceiling is Pickett. We have watched Patrick Peterson come in and be ready to go. We have watched Derek Stingley come in, and he was the best corner on the team as a freshman. Those are probably the gold standard of freshman corners, and that's a hard thing to live up to. Those 2 guys are literally all pro players in the NFL, okay? That's a hard bar to live up to. But if I just lowered the bar 1 rung and went to Tre'Davious White, who started 11 games his freshman year. If I lowered the bar 1 rung and talked about somebody like Eli Ricks, who left, but in the COVID year, he had a pick 6 in the swamp. He was ready to play. He had a big play against Mississippi State when Stingley was hurt, or in the hospital, as it were. So they've had 5-star freshman corners come in and be ready to play. And that's the company that Pickett keeps on the recruiting trail. He is Peterson. He is Stingley. He is Trey White. He is Eli Ricks. Like, that's the type of recruit he was. So if he is a really good SEC corner right now, maybe that bumps Stamps into nickel. And you've got Delane and Pickett on the outside and Stamps in there at nickel playing in some of the coverage spots that like Burns or Ryan were in last year, and you've upgraded. That's the ceiling. If you can get to that, then all of a sudden you're starting to change the way that DBU looks. Last year, LSU's pass defense was not nearly good enough. I don't know that we paid enough attention to it. You were 10th in the SEC in passing yards allowed per game, and you were 12th in the SEC in completion percentage allowed. Now, third down is a complicated statistic based on all the factors that go into it. How do you do on first and second down? What is your average line to gain on third down when you're on defense? Sometimes it's not the pass defense's fault because you've been giving up stuff on the ground and they're always in 3rd and 2 and you just get beat. But I will suggest that if you're 10th in the SEC in passing yards per game allowed and if you're 12th in completion percentage allowed, it's not a coincidence that you're 14th in the league in third down conversions allowed. There were only 2 teams in the league worse than LSU in third down defense last year, Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, who is historically atrocious. So that's not nearly good enough. I know that we looked at last year's defense and thought, well, they've gotten a little bit better. But if you take out 2023 and you just evaluate 2024 for what it was defensively, it was miles below the standard. Miles below. So, yes, there was a stride made, and I'm not pinning that on Blake Baker. I'm not saying he did a bad job. Nothing of the sort. I'm not saying what LSU did last year is an indicator of what they're going to do this year. I think it's a brand new team, a brand new culture, a second-year coach with a little bit different staff. Like it's different. But it wasn't good last year. And the defensive backs were not good enough. And I called for that 2 years ago when Jordan Travis absolutely lit them up in Orlando, and I was worried about it last year against Lincoln Riley. And truth be told, the DBs held up for 2.5 quarters against USC last year. LSU was leading the game. USC was not really moving the ball. The defense was good for 2.5 quarters. The last quarter and a half, it was a disaster. Now, there was 2 acrobatic, ridiculous USC catches that are not really bad defense, but more spectacular stuff on the offense. But when LSU needed to either get a pass rush and knock the quarterback down, Miller Moss was up the entire second half, or cover somebody on the back end. They couldn't do it the last quarter and a half of the game. And that's how you have to win games. When you get a lead, you've got to rush the passer and cover somebody. And LSU couldn't do it last year when they needed to. So, to me, this is a big piece to getting back to who you are. And I think that LSU will cover better this year, and I think the numbers will be significantly better because I think LSU will rush the passer better this year as well, which creates less throwing opportunities, more chances to make a play on the ball, potentially more interceptions, more turnovers. All of that should be good. When I look at last year's secondary and the talent level there, and I look at what LSU is going to have this year, I think it's an upgrade. And I don't know to what degree, but I feel like things are moving in the correct direction with Corey Raymond and this defense. Again, I don't think Stamps is a first-team All-SEC player today. I don't think Mansoor Delane is a first-round pick. I don't think he is potentially an All-SEC guy right now. But their floors are pretty high. You add Pickett into that mix, and you get much, much better at safety, which we'll talk about on tomorrow's show. Then you're starting to get back to where you were. Because I think Stamps can be a pro. I think Delane can be a pro. I know Pickett can be a pro. And I think you've got some guys at safety in Halsey and Cooley to be sure, and then maybe Spears, maybe Jordan Gilbert that can be pros as well. That's what it used to look like. And it just hasn't for the last few years. You've been a little bit undersized, not as many 5-star recruits. You've taken some 3-stars from out of the state. Just not what you need. This looks closer. So I'm excited what Corey Raymond's group can do in 2025. I think the defensive backs are going to be much, much improved. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.